G'day, legends. It is Jai, that Aussie Metal Guy here with Crank.com. So tonight, wherever you are in the world, it's a great pleasure that I'm joined again by Mr. Samy Elbanna, vocalist and guitarist of Finland's Lost Society. We're getting to catch up ahead of their sixth album, Hell is a State of Mind. It is out March 6th via Nuclear Blast. This record does feel like a defining moment, cinematic, fearless, and picking up exactly where If the Sky Came Down left off, but pushing things to a whole new level in sound, scale, and ambition. Sammy, it is great to see you again, mate. Let's dive into it.
Dude, I'm so happy to be here. Hell yeah, dude.
Absolute bloody pleasure, man. This album absolutely fucking rips, man. I've loved the evolution of you guys from the start, back around 2013 with that first one, right up to now. This album has been described by yourselves and the pressers as the moment you guys kind of stop exploring and start becoming yourself fully. When you look at Hell as a State of Mind next to If the Sky Came Down, what do you feel has changed for you to make this feel like a bit more of your true form?
Well, honestly, for me, one of the things that I love about music and writing music and being in this metal scene of ours is that there is an evolution within every record, and I've always wanted to keep it that way because it's been 15 years since I've been writing songs for the first record, and I'm 30 years old now, and I feel like obviously the observations that I have within these years and everything I feel, everything I see, and everything that happens to my life is always represented in the music. And since the last record, obviously a lot happened because, for the last record, I feel like where we started writing, I was in a pretty bad place in my own personal life. And, the record and writing it ended up being, my savior, which goes to show how how big of a power music has and music can be for people. So starting this record and writing it, I feel like I was in a very sort of pure place in my life, and I could just dive back into the pure joy of writing music and listening to music. And just like I feel like for this record, our biggest inspirations, even in the studio, it wasn't anything contemporary. It was nothing that had come out for the last 10 years. But, we dive back to fucking, Hey Stupid by Alice Cooper, or Painkiller by Priest, or Seven Son by Iron Maiden. I feel like, we really channeled those roots of what we loved to listen to back as kids. And we were just, it was just pure sort of joy of writing music this time around. And I feel like that really translates into the record. And on top of that, obviously, as we do for every album, we wanted to challenge ourselves. We wanted to write something consciously that's better than anything we've done before because, I feel like that's a very natural part of writing also, that if we lose that spark of, we can always do better, then I feel like at that point there's no reason to even write an album.
Exactly. And 3 years ago, when we spoke about If the Sky Came Down, and you kind of touched on it there, you called it the heart and soul of Lost Society, written in some of your darkest moments, as you just kind of mentioned, without kind of that censorship. Hell is a State of Mind picks up right there and kind of, ends in liberation. It almost feels like with Afterlife, kind of that being the first track, following on from the last one of If the Sky Came Down. Tell me a little bit about that, kind of what I've said there.
Well, I'm stoked that you picked up on that because I mean that for me it was very conscious, that sort of pretty early on with the whole writing process. I came up with this whole sort of storyline for this album, and as I've said countless times, this is very close to a concept record, the closest thing that we've ever done anyway. And I feel like it's really cool because it does like directly pick up from Suffocating, which was
Yeah.
the last track on the last album. Because for that album it was a very sort of, I'd say that the lyrics, even though they ended up being the words that sort of saved me from a very dark situation, the overall theme is pretty dark anyway. But for this record, I feel like we're picking up where we started, but we're steering to a fully different direction in the sense that, getting from Afterlife to Hell is a State of Mind, it's it's the story of, the protagonist of the record who's making his way through this, proverbial afterlife, and observing all of these things and learning to accept the things that you can't change, and learning that the things that you can change are worth, staring to change. And it's in a way that it's very empowering, and it's a story of self-acceptance and getting to that, getting to that realization that, if you can change your life around and if you can steer in a different direction, you have to do everything that you can towards that. And I feel like it's really cool, sort of challenging, in my sense of heavy metal, where it's like you have these very aggressive songs and very sort of dark and angry lyrics, where it's going to more of a direction that you have very heavy music that holds a lot of power inside it, but you're doing a very sort of empowering lyric, sort of challenging people to steer in that better direction, which I think is a really cool sort of play on these two extremes.
Yeah, I love the juxtapose where it's kind of picked up from If the Sky Came Down. And when I got this album and it started with Afterlife, I hammered the hell out of that album, dude. It really caught me.
I
And
love hearing that, man.
after putting on this album and hearing the evolution, but kind of like the nod and the kind of the pushing forward, even with the title, with the hell of a state of mind. It's kind of, you were touching there. It's kind of, we create this hell in a sense of ourselves in our state of mind as well. I think kind of Buddhism say life is suffering, but once you understand that statement, you kind of see it as a positive. You flip the script as well.
100%. And because, I love the fact that for every time I write a lyric, I have my own reasons for writing it. I have
Yeah.
my own sort of story in my head, but I love the fact that everything I write is also, it can be interpreted as very sort of universal. It's universal themes, but only I can sort of give the angle that I have, because, which is something that I love about music in general and writing lyrics in general, which is like, you can have 10,000 people who write a song about death, but everyone's going to have different words. Everyone's going to have a different way that they perceive the subject. No one's ever going to have a fully, sort of similar way of seeing the world. And that's what I feel like I have to offer to this universe or this earth. It's like I have my way of seeing these subjects that you've heard about earlier.
Yeah, and the album does confront those themes of destructive love, addiction, self-sabotage, and the cruelty that we see in society at times as well. Which of these themes felt most urgent to you to kind of process through the music as well?
Well, I feel like they all sort of tie in together, because it's all about, all of the subjects that you just mentioned, be it sort of a forbidden love or an addiction, or just, societal problems. They all play a part in what my, life has been for the last, 4 years since the last record, or in another way, it's everything that I've been through since, being a kid to this moment, because, it's like every time I write something, it's going to be, I can't write from anyone else's perspective but my own. So, in a way, it all ties into to myself and the way I see things. And, I mean, obviously the thing that makes me sad every time I write a lyric that's criticizing, war or criticizing politics and stuff, is that that's the saddest subject, because it always is the most sort of like, it's the most sort of it's always relevant, which fucking pisses me off. Back from when we started the band, and I came up with Lost Society, obviously it was a take on a 14-year-old Sammy who was seeing the world. Obviously, 16 years later, it bums me out that the name Lost Society is more relevant than ever.
Yeah, damn straight. The album feels very close to a concept album, but it's not. It's something you've always said you want listeners to build their own story as well. You're expressing yourself, but your listeners are feeling this through the track and feeling really connected to this, as I am to this album as well. How important is it for you to leave that space open for the listener as well?
Oh, it's very important to me, because I believe it. I think it was Dave Grohl who said years and years ago at a live show that he feels like it's beautiful how you can have, an arena full of 50,000 people, and they're singing the same lyric, but they're gonna have 50,000 different stories. And I
Yes.
feel like that really talks, in volume to me, because it takes me back to, the first metal song I ever heard was The Prisoner by Iron Maiden. It was a life-changing moment for me at 7 years old. But obviously, Bruce Dickinson singing, "I'm not a prisoner, I'm a free man." It didn't mean to me what it meant to him. To me, it meant, fuck school. I don't want to go back. But it's I think it's a beautiful thing how a lyric can be so sort of it can be such a different angle for so many people. It can be a different story, but still it's sort of like the basis and the core of it is something that speaks to everyone on a very universal level. But speaking on just the sort of the idea of a concept record versus taking songs and picking them apart, to me it was very important still that even though there is there is the red line, there is the storyline on this record. I feel like it's very important that people can also have every song and it doesn't sort of make any less sense. It makes almost more sense by itself, but in a different way. It's like Dead People Scare Me is a very different song if you hear only that song versus what it is on that record. And I
Yeah.
think it's cool because it gives a different dimension to a lot of tracks also.
Oh yeah, definitely. The rap cadence you bring into some of these tracks is absolutely fucking unreal the way you
Thank
do it,
you,
dude.
man.
It must
I
have
mean,
been
as you
fun
can see,
playing with that.
because as you can see, I have a lot to say always, so just translating that into screaming was very natural for me.
Yeah, dude. And the orchestration, I want to talk about the orchestration you brought in because it's absolutely fucking amazing. The orchestration you brought in some of these different tracks, starts out with Kill the Light with a bit of the acoustic kind of the guitar sound, and then just kicks off to all these different elements, the orchestration coming into just this massive, huge sound. I love that play with these tracks. Tell me a little bit about that side of things.
Well, for us, that it was a very cool moment. Sort of, it was actually when we wrote the song "Blood Diamond" that we
Yep.
that we released as a single. Because for that moment, it's sort of a melody that was transformed into something. Sort of the thought that we had in our heads was we wanted to do something almost like Dimmu Borgir-esque for that melody for that particular one. But it ended up being sort of the catalyst for the rest of the record, where it's like we realized that in this day and age where people are just, the battle of making a metal song is who can have the hardest breakdown or who can make the weirdest sound from their bodies. It was like, it took me back to something very sort of, it was like a moment where I realized that putting in a classical instrument and putting that together with metal music creates in my head something that sounds much more heavy than, having just a blast beat for 10 minutes. And it was something that we thought was worth exploring. And once we sort of realized that it's possible for us to actually hire a literal orchestra to play these songs and record these songs for us, I feel like the songs started slowly but surely sort of writing themselves with the arrangements because, for us, it was obviously very important that the band has to be the core of everything because, it's four guys in the band, four guys on stage. So we have to remain sort of the basis of everything. But what it did, knowing that we could have these orchestral elements, was it made it easier to create harmonies on top of all of that and just, add that necessary sort of dramatic aspect to the songs. And like as you mentioned, Kill the Light, I think is a perfect example of all of these extremes where you have going from the most sort of stripped down instrument, which is, an acoustic guitar, to the fully sort of band moment with the orchestra, and then going to like an almost operatic sort of C section of the song. I think it's a perfect representation of the dynamics that I think we were able to create on this record.
Did that open up a lot for you? Because like, I think I was reading with the songwriting, you sat there with the guitars and kind of that's how a lot of these tracks started. But what tracks kind of changed the most from you from that original point to filling out to so big? Because these tracks,
That's a great question. I'd probably say it's going to be Hell is a State of Mind, the title
yeah,
track. Don't get me wrong, every one of these songs obviously went through a lot of different changes. Most of them were written about, six or seven times over and over again to reach the final, form of them. But Hell is a State of Mind it started from a beat and a rap that I wrote when I think I had like a, almost 40 degrees Celsius fever in my old place. I was just, laying on the couch and I had a laptop and I wrote Hell's a State of Mind and I wrote a verse and I just recorded it on my microphone. I didn't remember anything about it the next day. but I sent it over after I listened to it to our producer, and he was like, "There's something here. It's definitely not this, but it's something." And from there it just started spiraling out of control. And in the end we had a 5 minute sort of almost epic in my head, an epic song, even though it's only 5 minutes, but it reminds me of, the aesthetic of Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner or something like
Yeah.
that Iron Maiden would write and, call it an epic track. But it went through a lot, and I think it sort of turned out as probably the most dramatic and tragic sort of. It's because it starts with the almost, it reminds us of like old Italian sort of romantic sort of violin stuff. Then it goes to a very sort of progressive metal corey kind of thing, and then you have the rap elements, you have the pop elements, and it's just a big mashup, which in my head shows or showcases the strength of this band, which is that we can do, or we can translate a lot of our own personal sort of influences into this band without making it sort of sound weird in my
Yeah.
head. And I mean, but yeah, that song was definitely one of them.
And there's emotion, so much emotion in some of these tracks and vulnerability. Like, is this what you wanted? That's just a beautiful fucking track as well, man. What makes this track hit so hard emotionally, kind of for you?
I mean, it's honestly crazy because I think it's just the fact that you can have a lyric that's very universal as it is, and a theme that's very universal. I feel like that always speaks volumes. And to me it was the fact that I didn't need to sort of get out of character to sing any of these things. They're all something that I have, my own angle on, and they all touch me in some, in one way or another, sort of on an emotional level. So I feel like that was definitely the strength to getting that track to feel like it means something. And knowing that you can write something that, I know that writing a song in, from here in Helsinki, Finland, it's not going to change the world, but it's going to change, it's going to change maybe someone's attitude towards something, or give someone something to reflect about. And I feel like that gives me power to record or to write or to arrange a song like that.
Yeah, well, music's therapy. You know what it was like growing up as a young lad, and you listen to your bands like that. There's someone there who's going to be rocking
100%.
this song, singing their fucking heart out, like in their room, and then getting able to sing it live because you guys are kicking off on a live tour as well. Which songs are you looking forward to kind of playing live? Because there's so many great songs here that are just going to translate fucking amazingly live, dude.
Dude, it's an ongoing struggle of trying to write the set list at this point, because honestly, I'd love to do each and every one of the songs, but for me, it's probably going to be the title track is one.
Yeah.
And just because I feel like it's just such a strong song, is this what you wanted? Because I feel like it's just a very powerful song with the melodics of it. And getting to a song like Synthetic, I'd love to bring that live, because I feel like that's just one of those. It's more straightforward than anything else on the record. But because we are a band that's obviously known for, just having these adrenaline soaked shows with just, not chilling out for even a second. So I feel like that song will definitely also translate live. But I mean, down to the line, I'd love to do any one of these songs.
Yeah, dude. Tell us a little bit more about that track Synthetic, because that's catchy. Oh, this whole album's catchy as man. So many fucking earworms and hooks in it, man. But I love the start of that Synthetic, the groove and the melody in it. It's just kind of different, but it's cool as fuck, man. It just had me
Well,
going over in my head.
that was actually funny, because that was one of the tracks on the record that started off a lyric versus starting off from the music first.
Okay.
Because back in the day, it's always been music first, lyrics later. But for this record, it was very much 50-50, sometimes even sort of more so, a lyric or a phrase that started everything. But for me, I brought into the studio to Jonas. I was like, hey, I have this line, I have this synthetic 666 bad decisions and fucked up genetics. I had this thing recorded in a sort of different way, but the melody was there. And it was, one of those moments. I think it was about, 6 hours in the studio, and we had the frame of the song done. And as per usual, it went through a lot of different variations and different evolutions. But it was one of those songs that we knew we wanted to bring in sort of like almost like a cyberpunk sort of sonic aesthetic to it. You know,
Yeah.
there's a lot of synths. It's a very synth heavy production, but it also has just, a powerful, very simple riff, but a very powerful riff. And I think the verses, the vocals on the verses are probably my favorite of the whole record because it's like it's a big sort of layering on top of each other with these beautiful, cool, intricate harmonies. But all in all, it's like it's two notes or three notes. So it makes for a very cool, powerful track in my head.
Yeah, and I did want to ask about your vocals as well. With Jonas, you're working back with him, and back in 2023, you talked about challenging yourself vocally with Jonas. I did put this down in my notes: more singing, less screaming. On Hell, you kind of stepped that up a notch. I feel like you're doing more of those, falsettos, the screams, the rap cadences as well. Tell us a little bit about that. Were there moments that felt more revealing or uncomfortable, or was it just great to be able to kind of push yourself a little bit further vocally?
Well, I mean, I all in all, I was very excited to have the opportunity, or like sort of the songs gave a lot of freedom
Mm.
towards writing very intricate melodies and sort of vocal lines. And to me, it's always been sort of a privilege and a conscious challenge that we consciously write more difficult vocal lines and vocal hooks. So I have to evolve as a singer.
Yeah.
And for me also, we definitely talked about it a lot with Jonas, where we were like, we want to establish the fact that I'm not just a guitarist who sings, but I'm a guitarist and a singer. And for me, it was very, in a way natural because I've always loved singing, but I've just, on the first record, it wouldn't have even came to mind to try to sing a melody because I just wasn't ready. I was immature as a singer and I couldn't do it. But, as we go further in time and I'm singing constantly, we're touring a lot, mixed with the fact that we just write what we write. I feel like it's always a cool thing that we just get to sort of, I consciously make myself a better singer by challenging myself, and then I just have to pull it off. It's like if I write something like, fucking, the no longer human, and I can't deliver it in the studio, then it's going to be pointless. But I know that I have to work my ass off to getting myself onto that level as a vocalist before I enter the studio or before we start doing live shows. And for this record, I'm very proud of the vocal tracks,
Yeah.
and I think it's definitely, it's a step forward or a massive step forward. And I feel like it only gives the possibility to, do something even crazier for the next record, hopefully.
Exactly. And you stepped it up. The production on this is absolutely massive. Was there a moment during recording that made you think, yeah, this is going to be something else when the listeners get their ears on this?
I mean, at the moment where it was our second week at a studio called Finnvox Studios here in
Yeah.
Finland. We had it for a month where we were recording just the drums, the bass tracks, and the rhythm guitar tracks. And I remember it was the second week, and we brought in, I'm not even bullshitting you, we brought in 25 guitar amplifiers and 10 different cabs. And our guitarist Arttu and our producer Jonas mixed and matched each amplifier. I was like, I don't give a fuck. You can do this thing, I'll do something else. But they went through each and every single one of them, just trying to look for that sonic world that we wanted to produce. And at that point, I realized that we're onto something with just the fact that I feel like for the last 10 years, a lot of metal albums and modern metal albums, especially sonically they sound exactly the same. It's like you can have bands that have obviously different songs and different aesthetics, but once they go to the studio, they're gonna have the same drum samples, they're gonna have the same digital amplifiers for guitars and blah blah blah. The vocal production is very similar, and it's like even a good song won't sort of jump over another song that sounds the same because you don't even know what band it is. And even though I'm a fan of some of these bands, it sort of bums me out that they don't try to sort of seek a different sonic representation of
Yep.
what they do. Versus, you have a band like Ghost or still bands like, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, who always sound exactly like they themselves. It's like you hear one note and you're like, oh, I know this band. And, we consciously tried to build a sound or like a representation of what we are as a band sonically, just as much as, musically or vocally or lyrically. And I feel like that's one of the strong suits that we have on this record. It's like you're not gonna hear an I Prevail song that sounds like this, or a Bring Me song that sounds like this, or Falling in Reverse, or whatever. It's like this is fully its own sort of unit, which I'm very excited about.
Yeah, and you are touring right across Europe after the release of this through what I think UK, Germany, Scandinavia.
Yes,
Um,
sir.
you must be pretty excited to get out there and start
I'm
releasing
very
this new
excited.
material live.
I'm very excited because obviously I love writing a record, but touring is, that's the main thing. It's when you get so up and close with seeing the fan base and seeing the new connections you're making, and it's just, a good live show is always the best thing that you can experience as a human being, in my opinion. Both as a crowd member and as a musician. So I'm very much looking forward to it, and getting to tour our favorite places and a lot of new places this time around. It's going to be very special for sure.
Yeah, and I know you're going to get asked this, dude. Australia, chances of getting you guys down under. I did catch you actually
Dude,
with Amaranth a few years ago, dude. You're talking about
I
loving
I've been
singing, dude.
talking I've been talking about it all morning long that I fell in love with Australia and New Zealand.
We
And
fell in
yeah,
love
I was
too.
fortunate enough, and the funny thing is that I actually did the tour with Amaranth during the vocal recordings of this record, where it's like it was like, I'd been there for a month recording vocals, then I went to Australia and New Zealand for a week and a half, then I went back to singing. But I fell in love with the country, and especially I had an opportunity to have a day off in Sydney, and I fucking love that place. So, I'll say what I said to everyone else, that to any promoter who is listening in Australia or New Zealand, please book us and we'll be on the first fucking flight there. I promise.
There we fucking go. We got to get Lost Society down under. Sammy, this
Yes, sir.
absolute fucking pleasure. Always a pleasure to get to take chat with you. Thank you so much for your time. Everybody's watching. Hell is a State of a Mind does drop March 6th by Nuclear Blast. You are going to want to get it and put it in the stereos. Crank it up really loud so the neighbors can hear it. Sammy, last words, shout outs, thank yous are all on you, my friend.
Oh, dude, first of all, thank you so much for this. I had such a great time chatting with you. And to anyone who is listening or reading, thank you so much for the endless support. And I hope this record finds its way to your earphones or your loudspeakers. And if you want to listen to it from start to finish. And I hope that connects to you in one level or on one level or another. And hopefully at some point we can do it live with all of you.
Damn straight. Cheers, mate.